If you would join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Our normal mindfulness coordinator could not be in attendance tonight due to a conflict or a change of schedule. So, Sean, if you would lead us,
I'd be happy to.
Appreciate it.
As a reminder of the mindfulness practice, something that has begun Winooski School District and filtering throughout the grades with both staff and students, and also through the city of Winooski with the Mindful City Project, working with city employees and members of the community to practice mindfulness. So if we could all just take a comfortable seat, take a couple of deep in and out breaths. And just gently and slowly arrive here. Attempting to leave all the trials and tribulations of the day behind so that we can be here together and be present. Notice where the tension is in your body, in your shoulders, in your face, and just release that tension with an in and out breath. Take a final one or two deep in and out breaths. And now we enter back in off of our mindfulness practice to the most challenging part, which is bringing that mindfulness and that calm into the day-to-day. See if you can set the intention for the next few minutes, the remainder of the meeting and the evening, to really pay attention. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, any items for the agenda or any adjustments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to focus on learning.
So I just wanted to tee this up and thank our technology department team for being here tonight, and also thank the board for their support of the development of this team, because in the past couple of years, with a significant influx of technology, mostly in the form of one devices, we have needed to create a more robust technology department in order to support that. Because if you don't have the support behind the technology, it can end up costing a lot more and not really meeting its potential in terms of learning for students and operational efficiencies that can occur through that. So thanks to the board, thanks to the community for particularly the data manager position, for the increased technology technician and webmaster positions, And we've been able to create this incredible team that supports technology every day in the school district in a really fantastic way. And I'm going to hand it over to them. And the order here is we're going to spend a little bit of time where each one of them are going to introduce themselves and do a very brief explanation of their roles and responsibilities. And we want to spend the bulk of the time with our technology integrationist, Drew Blanchard, who's going to talk about some of the great things that are going on with staff and students in integrating technology in the district.
Where would you like me, boss? All the way over here.
Yeah.
My name is Brian Thompson, and I'm the district's technology coordinator. This is my 16th year at Winooski School District. And I was thinking a little bit early today, when I first started at Winooski, we had about 4 servers, and the elementary school had Apple IIes on a small LAN connected to a Macintosh SE server that distributed about 30 different games. And at the time, maybe 2 people were still using that. Where's my little face there? Going backwards.
Yes, I know. This is bad.
Thank you. The high school and middle school had aging PowerPC beige computers. The elementary school had a brand new computer lab of the original iMacs, the Bondi Blue iMacs. And in order to bring those here, the faculty had to be part of a UVM course, which gave them credit. And when they were finished with it, they were all given an iMac to use in the computer lab. So all of the classes would come down maybe once a week and use the computer lab. And we slowly started to get rid of the beige PowerPC computers for newer beige computers and iMacs, or donated iMacs, or the school districts relied on a Title II grant from the state, and we were given $5,000 to $10,000 a year for the entire district to share. So the first year, elementary school got the largest portion, then middle school and high school. And today we now have a one-to-one program from 5th grade to 12th grade. In the elementary school we're using the iPads, middle school Chromebooks, and high school Chromebooks in the 9th grade, and the rest Macintosh, MacBook Airs, I should say. Combination of MacBook Pros and MacBook Airs. So my job as a technology coordinator is to oversee technology in the school district. I do all of the purchasing of hardware, software. I either do the repairs or have our team help with the repairs. I also go over the work orders, or distribute work orders, assign work orders to people. I'm the network administrator for all of the servers in the district. So we went from 4 to 6 servers to about 12 to 14, and then we started decreasing them as we used more cloud-based. So there was an increase of servers and now decrease of servers. And using the Google for schools, we're really entrenched with the Google for Education. Another one of my roles is to keep online documents safe and secure as we can, at least. We have a firewall connected to our computer network. This year we just upgraded to a 1 gigabit internet connection, which will quickly be saturated as the kids and teachers start using it for their cloud-based video editing and picture editing and other educational purposes. And I think that's about it for me.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks for, I asked Brian to address the question that came up last month around the monitoring report with security and the servers and everything, and so I hope that was, you noticed that and that was part of that response.
Okay. Hi, I'm Matt Gonzalez, the webmaster / help desk. For the webmaster side of it, I develop and maintain the district website. I work with administration and staff members to create web solutions for whatever they need, basically throughout the district. Along with that, and our growing concern of security, I always spend quite a bit of time to reinforce security on the website. On the help desk side, I answer the help desk phone lines, coordinate assistance with whatever anybody calls in for. You know, if you got a teacher calling in saying, this isn't working for me right now, I do what I can to make it work. I work with Carl on that very closely, and Brian. We're a pretty tight-knit team, so my presentation is going to be a little shorter than Brian's, but I think that pretty much covers it. Other than that, it's kind of boring details, so let me hand it off to Carl.
Well, Matt, I would also add that, you know, the website has been there was something that was identified right after I got here that was not kind of up to snuff and we need to improve. And you did a great job of redoing that. And you know, he worked with some developers from My Web Brochure, and so it was nice to have some collaboration because he's the only web person here. And that was nice to have one of our neighborhood partners help out too. But that's a real credit to you, Matt, and the work that you did with the website.
Appreciate that. And it's an ongoing community effort. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Hey guys, I'm Carl. I started here last summer. I'm the general technician on the team here. So I'll kind of be the first responder to calls and stuff. Like Matt said, we kind of all take calls when people are having issues, but I'm usually the guy that'll get sent out to the field to repair stuff. Someone calls in, oh, my projector's not working, I need this to work right now for the presentation. Come in and fix it, you know, I need a password reset. You know, fast things people call for, I can handle that real quick. And sometimes people will put in work orders for even the simplest things. I'll take care of those too, or the long-term ones. So kind of just do the general stuff, repair, software update, hardware update. A lot of the time I'll just be taking computers out of rooms and bringing in ones that are working. Sometimes it comes to that. So I'm usually the guy that's moving around the computers. I also help a lot with managing the one-to-one system, the iPads and the Chromebooks. I can put apps onto iPads for the teachers that need specific ones loaded on. We've got a really nice system with the iPads and JFK. Each classroom's got a card, and I won't bore you with the details, but I help with those a lot. I also process most of the insurance claims when we get broken devices coming in, so I try to get that sent out pretty quick, but we've had a pretty long turnaround lately, but we've been working on getting the process a little bit faster for broken devices, because that's a constant conveyor of machines coming in and out. So yeah, I pretty much do the general work. I'm here for support and always happy to help, and that's pretty much my job on the team. So it's general tech support for all your tech needs. I'll hand it off to our data manager.
Hi.
You switched it off yourself.
There you go. You're good. Go ahead.
There we go.
Sorry, I thought it landed here. I'm Randy Wood. I'm the district data manager. My primary responsibility would generally be more in line with teachers and staff, because I manage the student assessment database. I record all the information is recorded either by me or teachers, in regard to managing data that helps support graduation expectations. I'm also the primary contact for helping people utilize that resource, which is VCAT, the Vermont Comprehensive Assessment Tool. The reason I'm here is I also have another responsibility in helping support the IT team. I also work as a technician, first line responder to some extent, like Carl does. That's part of my responsibility. So I kind of fill two different roles here, trying to assist because the technology needs are so great, and sometimes these guys are very busy. I might end up being the only one in the office, and I can do, majority of the basic things like helping people get, network access to the wireless networks, or help them set up printers, or try to set usernames and reset passwords if they need that. Some of the other general basic things that we do, like helping people with projectors in the classrooms or printers in the classrooms, that kind of thing. So I kind of have a couple of roles here. The focus here would be my support for them.
Thank you.
Greetings. I'm going to do this first. I'm Drew Blanchard. I'm the Tech Integration Specialist. I'm not a germaphobe. I'm just not well. And I'm aware that I'm going to be touching this keyboard. So my role in the district is a bit different. While I'm connected to the IT department because of the nature of the things I work with, my actual role is very different. So a little bit of background. This is my 19th year as a teacher, my 15th year here. This is my 4th and a half in what is an ongoing evolution of my current position. My position did not exist several years ago as an Ellie Mae grant began to come in, and we began to see the possibility for a great deal of resource that we didn't normally have access to, including a huge influx of computers. We needed someone who basically worked with every person in the district, students and adults, kindergarten through central office, and helps them work with technology effectively as part of their job. So shepherding the one-to-one initiatives, getting that off the ground, all the agreements that are sort of the backbone of the initiatives, they came from the students. It was a collaboration. I sort of chaperoned it, but that really came from the students. I believe really strongly that all the work we do is done with the students, not to the students. So I don't want to get into the details of all that. I want to give you a rough idea of now what it looks like for a student here with the technology we have. What do we expect them to do? What are our common tools? What are the things that students, where the rubber meets the road, figuratively on the internet, what are we doing? I'm not going to get nitpicky. I just want to give you a really broad sense. So it starts with our technology in the classroom, and there are a couple bedrock systems to what we do. We are a Google Apps for Education district. That is a fancy way of saying we expect that the vast majority of students in the high school, certainly less so at the middle school, less so at JFK, they're working in Google Docs, they're working in Gmail, they're working in Google Slides, which is presentations, they're creating Google Sites. I want to show you briefly, and I want to show you what we have access to as a Google Apps for Education site. These are all of the things that we can access here at school. This list is absurd. It grows and grows ridiculously, and it is all free. Money was not the thing that drove that decision. What drove that decision is the fact that, and it just keeps going. And there are other parts you don't see, which is called labs, which are things that are in development. They're not quite ready for prime time. What you don't see is things like, oh, go away. What you don't see is things like I lost my train of thought. I was distracted by a bright, shiny thing, and this is the problem that we deal with all day long. And I totally get that, because I am very much like our students. Bright, shiny things make me happy. What drove that decision to go with Google Apps is not that it was free. It's that the whole, if you buy into the Google ethos, it's all about collaborating. Again, it's not that we're doing the work to the students, we're doing the work with the students. They use the button called share, but that's genuine. When documents are shared with teachers, depending on the course, depending on the assignment, that's the basis for a conversation, both online and in person. So the Google Apps are designed for students to be able to work collaboratively during the day, outside of the day. It's really important that they're able to access, students are able, teachers are able to access their work whenever they're ready, whenever it's a good time for them. Timestamps on some of the work I get from students, it can be frightening, but if 2 in the morning is when you're ready to do it, 2 in the morning is when you're ready to do it, that also informally explains why the next day that student is so tired. I mean, it tells us a lot. But Google Apps for Education, that's a cornerstone of what we do. Then we have, this was new last year? This was new last year. This is Canvas. This, again, plays a more prominent role at the high school than it does at the middle school. It is not currently at the elementary school. Canvas is a learning management system, which is a fancy way of saying sort of an online classroom. If you've taken college courses in the last 5 or 6 years, you may have encountered things like Blackboard or Moodle, or there's tons of them out there. But it's an online component to learning, and every teacher at the high school is expected to have a virtual classroom. This is also where all assignments are posted, where resources are posted, where work is turned in. This is different than Web to School, which is our official reporting, grading out to the state attendance thing. This is an interactive classroom environment. Canvas, as long as you have internet, you can get to Google Docs, you can get to Canvas. Notice I said if you have internet. Google Docs has an offline feature where you can be working without internet on a whole bunch of stuff. Canvas does not, which is why it's, you know, the transformation of the evolution of the library, the O'Brien Center, other places where students are able to get to internet. We're aware of that difficulty. So Canvas is another bedrock function. These are now more iLab, more innovative sort of things. Virtual High School and the Khan Academy, and these are huge, huge systems. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of things are available there. The math department makes, and other departments make varying degrees of use of these things. Virtual High School is a system where students, they never see a face-to-face teacher. They take their entire class online. For some students, that's really great. For some students, that's really bad. That only fits a very particular kind of learning style. You have to be very self-motivated, very self-disciplined. That's a bright, shiny thing. And if that's all you're staring at to do your work, that's a huge source of distraction. So part of my job is helping people, like, how do you do that? How do you manage that? I struggle with that. And it's not like I'm an expert at this, but I get it. This is part of my job, is showing people how to make use of these systems. Khan Academy, which started with, oh my God, what's his first name?
Last name.
I forgot.
Yeah, you should help me.
Salman
Salman Khan.
Khan.
Salman Khan, many years ago, he's an engineer. Got frustrated when his nieces, nephews were coming to him complaining about, well, I don't understand this math concept. And he said, well, and he just very visually, very graphically, he was demonstrating mathematical concepts to them. I mean, that's really how it grew. And now it's this huge interactive community filled with lessons and activities, and you can set up all sorts of things there. And it's even branched out to programming and coding and tons of things. This is where virtual high school is a static environment. Like you're put into a course with a curriculum and it's very rigid. Khan Academy is much more sort of free-flowing. It's a place where you can seek out information. It's a place where you can create stuff. Some teachers make excellent use of it. Some know that it exists. It's not my job to sort of push it down anybody's throat, but I'm a big fan of being insidious. I will show students really great shiny things and then say, now go forth and demand your teachers do it. And little by little, teachers begin to demand to do it. I'm a teacher, I get it. You do what's comfortable, and you don't know what you don't know. But here's the other part of my job. That's a mess. And I didn't create that. I can't take credit for that. That is roughly a learning pyramid of different things we might do in a classroom. And that's overwhelming to show to any teacher. But what I might say to a teacher is, okay, so what are you working on in your classroom? Give me an example of content. So 5th grade. 5th grade is just, they met as a team. They were out of school for a day or two, really trying to get their science curriculum into shape. I said, great, what are you working on? Solar system. Okay, so here's the other big part of my job. I'll say, what are your core learning goals? Because those don't change. Students need to be able to come out of this lesson, this activity, this unit, this whatever, demonstrating that they truly understand whatever it is, how the solar system was created. Might be a core thing that 5th grade wants all their students to do. Great, don't change that. But rather than there's nothing wrong with this, the old model out of styrofoam balls and clothes hangers and string to show the solar system, couldn't we do something else? Like, couldn't we design that in Minecraft? Couldn't we do a blog where you pretend to be a scientist out on a journey across the solar system, and as you pass the different planets, you describe what you see and you describe how it came to be. And it's a whole, like, there are so many opportunities for students to show that content. And all of those are different tools that could be used. And I will often say, so why don't we team teach? Why don't we plan for me to come in 4 or 5 days, focus on that one content. You talk about the content in math, science, social studies, and this is again, kindergarten to 12th grade. I will show bright, shiny toys. And we'll talk about, hey, look how we can do something in VoiceThread. I mean, I'm not going to go into these. There are hundreds of thousands of these tools out there. I also rely on the students to find better, new, bright, shiny toys. I don't have time for this. You guys find stuff. Share it with me. Share it with us. We're all about sharing. And then I go forth and work with the teachers. So my calendar, I have a couple core courses that I teach, but my calendar is open to everyone in the district. They have at it, because trying to coordinate with me to get stuff set up is impossible. So I just say to everyone, schedule yourself on my calendar, we'll meet, we'll talk about it, and it will just happen. And so I spend, now that the one-to-one machines are basically out in the field, I'm able to go back to that other part of my job, which is getting in the classrooms. And then days where there may be a gap on my calendar, I sort of literally just push myself into classes. I show up, just as an observer, what's going on, offer suggestion, troubleshooting, whatever, but my God, that pyramid, if it had all the stuff we really do, it would be ridiculous. And things come and go. Next week, that would look totally different. Keeping up with it is not the objective. Demonstrating learning in ways that are new and innovative and creative, because you have an incredibly powerful tool. Let's use that. And so the last big thing that we're working on Personalized learning plans, the PLP. It's a mandate from the state for certain grades. It's soon going to be mandated for other grades. What's a personalized learning plan really look like? We're still figuring that out. Where's it going to be? We're still figuring that out, but that was created in Google Sites with a committee, with student input. It's still evolving, but the expectation is that spring-ish, most students will have access to their own personalized learning plan. It will be an online environment. It'll be integral to advisory. It'll be part of a conversation of things like, well, this is what I think I want to do in life beyond school. So, as part of a conversation, what are the courses I need to take? Here. What are the things I need to do? Here. How am I keeping track of my progress with that stuff? Report card's not very helpful when it comes to that. What can I demonstrate that I really, truly can do? That's what's going to be here. And it's not going to be worksheets. It's going to be videos of presentations. It's going to be actual projects done in Khan Academy, done in VoiceThread, done wherever it is, to show that I really, truly have met my own personalized goals. This is not live yet. It's coming. There's another committee that's working on it. From my perspective, what's really amazing about it is when we're happy with this tool, because the tool is kind of secondary to what is our goal. With a click of 2 buttons, I sort of virtually hand this to every student in the high school and the middle school. All I had to do was just do a mass input of email and names, and what pops out is in the top left where it says WMHSPLP, that name changes. Automatically, that's replaced with the student's own name. It is given to the student with ownership. It's connected to their email address. They own it. But it's automatically shared with their advisory teachers, with other teachers with whom they work. Those teachers can't edit it, but they can see it because that's part of the relationship. The student didn't have to worry about creating it. The student didn't have to worry about any of those things. We give it to them. Now we focus on putting content in it. So my job is things like that. They're going to have a direct impact in the classrooms, working with the teachers, working with the students. Not to blow their minds with that, although there is an element of that that's fun. It's what's your content? What do you want students to be able to do? Hey, how about instead of that 5-page traditional report, we do something a little more interesting. Give the students some voice and choice in that. Give them some creativity with that. Give them ownership of that. Because when this is done, when they graduate, again with a click of a couple buttons, currently that would live sort of in the Winooski School District's system. But when they leave, we want them to take their work with them. So there's a very quick and easy way to just transfer that to a personal account. All of your email, all of your docs, all of your files, everything, take it with you. We should not own that. That's yours. And that's another big thing that's a part of my job. As students leave us, how do you take that stuff with you? So again, it's all done with the students. It's a really, really broad brushstroke of what technology integration, what my role here is. And now I'm going to ask the teacherly question of, what questions do you have?
So I'll start. Just from the brass tacks, I heard when I first got on the board that some time ago we tapped into a pretty good network to get onto the internet and had a direct line into the building. Is that still serve our needs?
We just did an upgrade, but I'm going to give the technical specs to Brian.
Yes, we just upgraded to a 1 gig connection. We were at I think it was 380, 340, somewhere around there. So we did a major boost in internet broadband connectivity.
Okay. And that'll keep us for some period of time. I won't say My first 20 meg hard drive was huge
Right,
until I
wait.
filled it.
When we went from a dedicated 56K line to a 386, I thought that was going to last for years, and it lasted. It was saturated the next day. So I'm not going to say how long it will last, but it's lasting right now.
All right, good.
But you did say it was gonna be saturated pretty quick when you mentioned it earlier.
Well, as these projects become more intense, especially the video editing aspects of it, it's going to use a lot more bandwidth.
Yeah. What's the next step from 1 gigabit?
They just keep
2?
They just
5?
We have
50.
we have pretty much unlimited. They just keep dialing it up and charging us more.
Uh-huh. Okay. That's an expensive upgrade to go from one to the next thing?
I don't have the pricing on that, but it was mostly reasonable for what we're using it for.
Mm-hmm.
This is a pie in the sky sort of thing, but there's a dedicated fiber optic line that Burlington District uses. It runs all the way down to the bridge and there it ends. And they've talked about collaborating with us to bring that fiber line up and sharing resources. That's a big thing, and it's inter-district, but there are dedicated fiber lines out there. It just running at that last, what is that phrase, the last
Mile.
not even last mile, like the
It would
last.
be in this case.
That's where the money adds up. But fiber optic is the big bump from there.
Data as well. I'm starting to see, and I appreciate it, I'm starting to see year-to-year compares with a turnover in the district in the range of 30%. It's always nice to know where your kids are when they do come in.
Mm-hmm.
Having some kind of a baseline to understand where they might be. So, that to me has always been a big deal to understand. Have we made a year's progress? Sean keeps preaching the year's progress. It may be moving a kid a year, maybe in the 8th grade, moving reading from the 3rd to the 4th grade, but at least you made a year's improvement. And you know that. And you can keep track of it and you can pass it along. So I think, the payoff that we've had here is noticeable. One other thing that I keep coming back to is the one-to-one initiative is nice. It's interesting. Obviously, the kids have to use it and understand it and be able to adapt to anything with it. It gives a technological equivalence in the classroom. And I think, Drew, this may be to you more than anything else. What do you sense as far as kids going home and having that same ability?
It's not equitable.
Okay.
That honestly, and I don't mean this the way it's going to sound like, but technology providing equity is, I can't use the word I want to use.
The potential is there.
The theory is there.
Okay.
Because that disequity is not abolished when you leave school.
Right.
That disequity is created by life circumstances.
No, understand that. But just the ability to at least use it at home and get comfortable with it. I'm thinking even, maybe a parent getting used to it and understanding it in a lot of cases.
And I try, one of the things that Laura Beanie and I are trying really hard to, now that these initiatives are underway, we're trying to do parent classes. Because I spend a tremendous amount of time talking to parents about that device in your child's hands is your child's. You don't get to use it. And I know how that sounds, especially when it's the only computer in the house. There are a lot of reasons for it. But if the parents truly don't have anything else, then we get donations, I have other resources, we could give an older computer to the family. Have at it. Don't touch your child's computer, for lots of reasons. But that, trying to inform the parents is the next big part of this. Because if you were to look at data, you would see very clearly there's some separations in homes understanding and support technology. And those homes that don't understand and support it tend to be homes where more problems occur. So we want to address that.
Hey Drew, so I work in a place where I'm constantly asked to learn new systems all the time. And I teach online. I teach on Canvas. I love Canvas. I think it's great. I teach at Champlain College. But I do find that I have a saturation point of like new system acquisition, and trying to use it to the best advantage for students can become a real big time suck. And you sort of alluded to it a little bit when you were talking about collaborating with teachers, but I wonder if you could talk a little more about how to keep teachers at pace with what's going on all around us, and it's just sort of like another thing that we have to learn, you know what I mean?
Well, it's just an extension of my teaching. I'm teaching the teachers. When I go into a classroom, ostensibly I'm teaching the students, but I'm very blunt with the teachers and say, I'm really teaching you. They just happen to be here.
Right.
I'm in the classrooms a lot. Teachers are also very aware I'm a teacher. Like, I'm a colleague, and it's really easy to ask me a question. It becomes apparent pretty quickly if somebody's struggling, or if somebody's not doing something that they should be doing, or something. I'm not going to ram anything down anybody's throat. There's a ton we have to keep track of. And I'm very mindful of that, which is where we could be doing way more. We could be setting a higher, because there are other non-technology related things we're doing.
Right.
So we set baseline expectations for some of this, and then the rest, I really like to coach in terms of options. Let's just give the students options. And you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you don't have to know how any of that technology works. You just have to evaluate it for quality of content. Did they meet your expectations for demonstrating they truly understand the evolution of the solar system? Like, yes or no?
Yeah.
I'm going to evaluate it in terms of technology. You evaluate it in terms of content.
Gotcha.
So that frees them up to, you're not the tech expert. I'm not a tech expert. They know more about this stuff than I do, and they have more time to do it.
Right.
And I value that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's where my most innovative stuff comes from. And again, there's that collaboration. It can't, you're right, it can be overwhelming. But that's why we don't try to set the baseline expectations too high.
Yeah.
What's really impressive is how many people have gone way, way beyond the baseline expectations. It says a lot about our staff.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that your question made me think of was workflow efficiencies.
Yeah.
Because I think long before I was here, whoever was selecting these different systems did a really nice job of selecting databases and systems that work well together. But you have 12 passwords and usernames, and you've got to go in and out here and all that. So how do we, personalize that environment for a teacher, for a student, for an administrator, for whoever it is, so that they, whether it's single sign-on, so they go in and then they can access all the stuff that they need to get to.
Yeah.
But really working on workflow and some efficiencies around that. Because I think that often gets in the way of the acquisition that you're talking about.
Absolutely. 27 clicks later, I get the report that I was looking for, and that's a real drag. Yeah. I also want to ask Randy, you landed here with like a ton of data in your lap.
Yeah.
How's it coming in terms of sorting and finding what we need and making sense out of all of those data points?
Yeah, we're making some progress in that regard. Sean had me produce a report for the staff on a 2-day retreat he did back in July.
Yep.
And I think they had all mentioned to me that was the first time they had actually seen a way that they could measure student progress in such a comprehensive format. So last year, when I had finished my first academic year, we actually were able to measure data specifically related around things like reading, and attendance was another big bonus for that, and classroom behaviors were another area that they looked at. I was able to give them some views of other data sources like the Youth at Risk data survey that the state comes out with. Nobody had ever, I actually wasn't in VCAT. I was actually able to contact the state and get raw data, not only at a cohort level, but down to a student level anyway, based on that material. I don't know who said what, but so I was able to produce some valuable information that they all said was very helpful to them in a retreat.
I think one of the tensions that Randy and I are finding is he has a report calendar that's basically driven by state required reports that he has to do.
Yeah.
And then we have the local data that we're trying to crunch, and we're moving from that end of year where we just brought it all together into a single report to now how do we get that in the hands of administrators and teachers monthly
Yeah.
so that they can track it, they can, and they can have those timely conversations with students, with parents, with their teammates.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot. It's a lot to ask. So we're trying to figure out how to manage all of those different inputs.
And so is this the kind of thing where a teacher needs to ask you for a report, or are you trying to build something where they can, or administrators or whomever can pull reports on their own in
Well,
your system?
Again, that's part of the learning process that
Yeah.
we're going through. Essentially a lot of the scaffolding that we needed to do just the measurement wasn't even there.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of my time right now building the infrastructure that I need to be able to put it in a format where they can find it. For instance, I'm working on this year, my focus is on the math assessments. We have a number of different programs that are used within the school that we're producing data for, but I haven't created a scaffold yet because I'm busy doing these state reports you just mentioned.
Yeah.
But my hope is that eventually when I've got a scaffold set and solidified, I can take the time to branch out, to talk to teachers and show them how the tool works so that they can try to get their own progress reports for themselves. And I've shown this a couple of times to because JFK had been kind of the proving ground for it, or at least that's what it appeared to be, because so much of the work had already been done. I have a couple of teachers that are starting to get comfortable with, how do I find my students and how do I pull out the data I need for them that could probably do it on their own. They come to me every once in a while and ask for a little bit of support.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to get the thing complete and finalized, or say I've got all our assessments that we take are in there. We're collecting data on until I really get a big push to get to the classroom level.
Yeah.
Until we have time, until we have systems set up and we can train people to do that, for now we're kind of saying to everybody, if you find that you really need some data, go to your direct administrative supervisor and then they'll make the request through Randy so that we keep it nice and tight right now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I mean, there's pros and cons, right? Because if I want to pull it myself, then I got to learn the system.
Right.
I got to go through the 27 clicks and
Back to your
there's more
previous
saturation,
Yeah, no, I'm more than happy to get anybody any data they want.
Yeah,
It's
which is helpful. Yeah.
and it's
The trade-off
it's-
is like the time,
Yeah.
that I got to wait
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks. That's such an important piece. I'm so pleased that you guys are helping out.
Yeah, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thanks for letting us run along.
Yeah.
That's okay. This is I think this for all of us has become the enlightening piece of a lot of our meetings.
Yeah.
To understand exactly what's going on and have it be told by those who do it, not be told how somebody thinks it's done. So,
The last thing I just wanted to mention is, this is a part of a very intentional approach around creating teams in the school. And this is one team, and they have made tremendous growth as a team in the last year and a half, and changed a lot of things, and have made a lot of the work much more efficient than it had been. And we wouldn't be able to do it without the resource. But whether it's Carl's running around, because there's a last minute glitch in a room, and there's 17 kids kind of waiting, for something exciting to happen, or Brian is kind of like the man behind the curtain, making sure that the guts are all working and everything's functioning. And we just talked about Randy and those competing demands and the great website that Matt manages. But they all come together at times when we have had technological crises before, and now we have 5 people who can get together and solve the problems. And they're doing a great job operating as a team. So appreciative for that, for the board support and for the work that you guys do.
thank you.
Yeah,
Anything
thanks.
else? All right, well, thank you very much.
It's been great to see it evolve.
I'm gonna go
Okay.
sleep.
Yeah, feel better.
Drew, is it true that you ride a motorcycle?
Yes.
Yeah.
You wanna buy one?
No.
It's currently for sale.
Is it? My son Max is very impressed. He comes home talking about your motorcycle quite often.
It's one of several hobbies that keep me in or out of trouble.
Right.
Okay.
What's
So,
pipes? What's pipes?
Pipes.
Yeah, who's on the list? You guys know what that is?
we'll do the consent while we get set up. So we'll move on to the consent agenda here. I would accept a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
And in our single, see, I remembered.
I know.
Me too.
Any discussion down through?
No, looks
Nope,
good.
looks good.
Okay. All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as is? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And then tonight, as part of another education session, we welcome Nicole Mace from the VSBA and trying to help us as we wend our way through the Act 46.
Mhm.
I looked it. I was hoping.
How was that?
I do. I have copies of lots of different shiny objects. I have to say it was very exciting to see that presentation as someone who 5 years ago participated in the envisioning process of what a technology-rich learning environment might look like in
Right.
Winooski.
Isn't it amazing to
And
see
here it
it
is. Yeah, that's incredible. So glad I was able to take that in.
But you were on that budgeting committee that year
I was on a lot of committees that year.
before this.
So, hello everyone.
Hello.
I am going to do my best to try to walk you through the key provisions of Act 46 that I think are important for all boards to feel like they have a really good handle on. I've been out several nights a week with school boards around the state, helping them sort through this law. It's a complex law. It builds upon many different layers of law, starting with laws that were created in the late 1960s designed to encourage union school district formation. So it's been an evolutionary process in Vermont, and I think it's really been designed to address a set of factors that have been building over time, and that the General Assembly felt like this year needed to be addressed, and the Act 46 was the vehicle that they chose to address that. So before I begin a presentation on Act 46, I always try to make sure folks feel really clear about the context for this conversation. And, sometimes media reports portray the laws, happening sort of, it was a rush job, wasn't thought through, that sort of thing. And so I think it's just important to understand this is a conversation that's been happening for many, many years. I've been in the State House covering education issues for 5 years, and it's been the topic of conversation every year during those 5 years. And it's really designed to address a series of statewide factors. I think the first one is an exciting one, and that is that as a state we're committed to public education, and we've set really high goals for ourselves through the education quality standards, through a commitment to universal pre-K, through Act 77, where we're saying every high school student is going to have access to a personal learning plan that's going to reflect their unique learning needs and aspirations. That's all really exciting stuff, and as you all know very well, it's a heavy lift. And you all are in a district that is fairly unique in terms of being a single pre-K through 12 district. I share this map with you because I think sometimes folks in a single pre-K 12 district, where that's really all you know, don't understand the level of complexity that exists statewide with our governance structure. And so this is a map of all school districts in Vermont and the supervisory unions where they reside. And the norm, well, the norm is there is no norm. Mm-hmm. So we have supervisory unions that are organized around a union high school, and the member school districts within that supervisory union they have separate elementary school districts, so a separate school board that oversees an elementary school or schools. And then all of those elementary schools feed into a union high school, which has another board. And so in some places you'll have a supervisory union that has 6, 7 different school districts all feeding into a single high school. There are other districts that have a blend. There is no Union High School district. Perhaps there's a single pre-K-12 district, but there are a number of elementary districts that either pay tuition at the high school level or they pay tuition for all grades. So there are 13 different governance structures in Vermont, 13 different operating structures in Vermont. And Act 46, in some part, was designed to bring a little bit of order to that landscape in order to better coordinate our resources pre-K through 12 to both accomplish greater opportunities for students and more efficiencies for taxpayers. So back to that's an important piece of context for you all to understand. I don't normally get into that when I'm in supervisory unions because folks understand that, but it's important that you're not, Chittenden County has, I think, more pre-K-12 single districts than the rest of other parts of the state, but there are also supervisory unions, Chittenden South being probably our closest neighbor, where they are organized around CVU and have a number of elementary districts. So in addition to having, I think, great expectations for our systems, we're also in an environment where we're serving students with increasingly complex needs. We are under tremendous fiscal pressure, and that is truer in certain communities than others, but certainly as a state, we're a statewide funding system. We share that, both the responsibility and the pressure associated with funding our education. We're seeing growing inequity in student opportunity and outcomes. So even within a single supervisory union where you have students going to the same high school, you'll have differences in opportunities available at the elementary district, school to school, simply based on the town of residence where those students are in, or the district.
Like the size of the school?
The size of the school is a factor, the socioeconomic background of the community, the different choices that have been made over time. I think certainly what we're starting to see is size is a factor in terms of your ability to absorb new costs and at the same time meet greater demands because you don't have the scale that a larger system has in order to absorb costs and respond to new demands. There's a significant leadership turnover situation statewide, so 30% of superintendents and principals turn over on an annual basis. Roughly that same percentage of school board members. So when you think about a really bold set of goals that the state set for ourselves and that we hold for ourselves, increasing challenges facing our students, a tight fiscal climate, and leadership instability, you sort of have a perfect storm. And these factors, we're also statewide experiencing, as you have all heard, I'm sure, declines in student enrollment. So we're educating roughly 20% fewer students than we were 20 years ago, and we have roughly the same staffing levels that we've had over that same time period. And so it's important to understand that's the backdrop, and these challenges aren't true everywhere.
They're not true.
They're not true everywhere. So there are some places that have been blessed by strong, stable leadership. There are some places that have not seen declines in student enrollment. They've seen increases. There are some students that are moving some systems that are moving full steam ahead implementing PLPs or universal pre-K, and there are others that are struggling to know where to begin. So I think the opportunity that Act 46 presents to every school district is an opportunity to examine what are the challenges that we face as a district. What's getting in the way of us being able to better respond to the needs of students at a cost our taxpayers can support over time? And how might we leverage this act to have those kinds of conversations within our communities and with neighboring communities in order to leverage relationships leverage partnerships in order to do better by kids. So I think it's really easy to start these conversations with structure and say, well, do we have 900 students? How many districts should we be talking to? How many board members should we think about having, et cetera? And if the conversation starts there, I think you miss a really important grounding piece, which you all are really, I think, familiar with and committed to. And that is, before we embark on any kind of systems change, why are we doing this? And if it's not going to help us do better by students, then we probably should think twice about doing it. So the first conversation to have is, what is it that we want for our kids? You all have had that conversation with our community, with each other for quite some time. So I feel like the commitment to a vision is clear here. And the question is, are you getting there? Or are there some roadblocks in the way that Act 46 might be able to be useful for you? At the same time as understanding what's important, what you hold as your goals for students, it's important that you understand what your communities value. So Act 46 contemplates change. Change is disruptive, it's scary, but it doesn't mean that you have to lose what matters most to you. So in these conversations, it's important that you are very clear on what it is that matters most to your communities. What is it that at the end of the day you can say, we didn't preserve everything that we've had for generations. And there are good reasons why we didn't do that, but we did hold on to what matters most. Because if you don't have the support of your communities over time, your system can't thrive. And then finally, what are the challenges that you face? And I think this is a difficult conversation, certainly for school boards and administrators to have, because it's important that we celebrate our successes. It's important that we focus on what we're doing well. But at the same time, it's important that we clearly understand where we're headed as systems, so we can think out, yeah, we might be situated right where we want to be today, but 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, have we set ourselves up to be a system that can endure and can thrive? And so I think that's really where you start to have a conversation about what are our built-in assumptions about how we've always done things that may be getting in the way of us exploring different ways of operating, different ways of governing, different ways of responding to student needs. And I think the work that's happened in this district over the last few years has done a lot of limit testing. And that's really exciting. And it's also scary and disruptive. So I think you all aren't afraid to test limits or assumptions. And it's exactly those kinds of conversations that Act 46 is asking boards to lead. So before I jump in to Act 46, does anybody have any reactions or questions or comments to that context? And Rainbow gets to have a front row seat for all of these conversations.
Just a repetition.
Yes, yes.
That's a unique opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's certainly going to create for us a challenge again in looking at what it is we have and why, and what else do we need, or what do we need different? So that's going to be an interesting budget year, to say the least.
Well, right, and we'll talk about the allowable growth rate at the end. I didn't want to start there.
Don't want to
yeah.
kick that off.
This is going to be a slow, painless walk, right?
A what?
Slow, painless walk through.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, no, I think all these questions are great, Nicole, about, the big sort of picture questions about our children, community values and the challenges and all that. I'm looking forward to hearing what Act 46 has to do with any of that. 'Cause my sense is that it just sort of freezes our ability to do stuff, and I'd like to get a different perception of that.
So your perception, is that grounded in the governance provisions or is that governed in the finance provisions?
In the cap, yeah.
Yeah, well, so that's
We can get to
yeah.
that.
So there are two very separate and distinct portions of Act 46. I agree with you. They seem to be sending contradictory messages to school boards. On the one hand, pursue a system, create a system that ensures equity, quality, and at the same time,
Don't spend any more money.
don't spend it. Well, and engage in a very challenging budgetary exercise
Yeah.
that may have an impact on those exact goals you're trying to achieve. So we will spend some time dealing with that. I appreciate the fact that that's where you guys are thinking.
I'm
Because
not. I'm actually listening too, and you made it sound like Act 46 is gonna help us achieve
Well-
these goals.
I'd love to change
Well,
my
and again, it's why I opened with a little bit of context around the supervisory union structure, because I think it's important for you all to understand. I mean, when we think about the district size in Vermont, over 30% of our school districts have fewer than 100 students. Our smallest school district has, I think, 6 students. Our largest district has 4,000. So Act 46 is a big piece of legislation trying to get its arms around a lot of these different issues. Winooski is sort of in this interesting spot where you are a single pre-K-12 district, so you're not in a supervisory union, but on the small side.
Barely.
Barely on the small side. And you have a history of partnering with other folks in the region in the interest of furthering student opportunity. So it's just important that you all are very clear on what the landscape is so that you can make informed decisions about how to proceed. You have options available to you. It's just important that you understand what those are. So that's what I'm going to try to talk you through.
Paul, I just wanted to
Yeah.
mention two things that I've been thinking a lot about. First is, we're a state that prides itself on equity, and what that really means, I guess, and defining it kind of at the state level and then locally.
Right.
Having my own experience as a parent in the Colchester district, having worked in Chittenden South and having worked now here, there are vast differences. And so, what legislatively and policy-wise, how do you impact that?
Right.
And because I'm not always convinced that we are as equitable as we like to describe ourselves
Right.
in the state of Vermont.
Right.
We're not.
Yeah, that balance of local and state, and why aren't we?
Right. Right. And it's certainly not. It's not an exclusively size-driven conversation whatsoever. And we know in systems that are stressed, if you don't have the ability to achieve some scale, you really are strapped in terms of responding to the needs of students. So
The other thing I've been thinking is just the tension. I don't want to miss an opportunity. So while we're like really close to 900 and we have all this wonderful energy, policy governance, stable leadership, all the programming and stuff that we're doing, and it may seem like the easier option is just to kind of say, here we are and we're cruising. I also, this is about educational opportunities for kids, and I don't want to miss an opportunity. I don't even know what those might be yet. I have some ideas, but I don't want to miss that.
Right.
And so it's that balance from a leadership role of we're working so hard at what we're doing right here, right now, and in the next year or two, and how do we balance that with exploring opportunities with other organizations?
So that it's still great in 5-10 years.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so there's a lot of different routes to explore. At the end of the day, Act 46 is about creating pre-K-12 systems that are responsible for every child, pre-K through 12. And the crux of the act is that by July 1 of 2019, educational opportunities in Vermont will be provided through sustainable governance structures that provide those opportunities at a reasonable cost. Those structures are expected to achieve a set of outcomes. The first is equity, both in the variety and the quality of educational opportunities. Lead students to meet or exceed the education quality standards. We just completed our regional meetings, and the Secretary of Education joined us for those and presented an update on the agency's education quality review process, which is being piloted this year and rolling out next year. So there's going to start to be some real concrete ways to measure how we're doing with respect to education quality standards. The third goal is to maximize operational efficiencies through the greater ability to share resources and promote transparency and accountability. There are some systems in Vermont that are so small that there's no student performance data available, because releasing that information would basically identify the students. The supervisory union structure is also not, arguably not as accountable as others that have, you're a single board, you hire a superintendent, the line of accountability is relatively clear. In a supervisory union, the lines are less clear. And as more services are being required to be provided through the supervisory union, those budgets are getting bigger. Those budgets aren't voted on directly by the electorate. So there's a lot of tension there with respect to how taxpayers and parents, students, board members are able to hold the system accountable. So the Act identifies a preferred governance structure. So if we're going to all be in sustainable governance structures in 2019, the legislature has said this is the most sustainable governance structure. And that's a single pre-K-12 district that serves at least 900 students. And there are the 4 common operating structures. Obviously, Winooski is one that operates all grades pre-K through 12. I think the situations in Vermont that are most complicated are supervisory unions that have a blend of operating structures, because forming a single district out of those requires some difficult choices. You all don't have to contend with those. And I'm not even going to walk you through them. So there are really 3 paths to get to 2019. There's the accelerated phase, which has generated, I think, a lot of discussion and activity in Vermont. There's a conventional phase, and then a self-assessment, quality review, and statewide plan. So,
and Nicole, in
yeah.
the accelerated, there's how many groups that are, there's quite a few, is it like 37 or something?
Yeah, well, there are 19 study committees, but that changes on almost a daily basis, so I don't have the daily count today, but I believe there are 10 to 12 that are actively going for either a town meeting day vote or shortly thereafter.
Right, and locally,
The only one's been approved by the state board. There are 2 places that are voting in November: Chittenden Central, Essex and Essex Junction in Westford, and then Elmore and Morrisville. They're also having a vote.
I only mention it because I think it's something that the board can kind of keep up to speed to see with what's happening. It would be important to see how these things go in the next year.
Exactly.
It will inform the decision making of the board.
Exactly, and I think that it's important to understand the accelerated phase was really intended to jumpstart activity in a half a dozen or so places in Vermont in order to produce some Vermont-specific data around the benefits associated with operating at scale. The national data is very difficult to translate to Vermont because our size is so small relative to the national. But the accelerated phase, if you're in a supervisory union, it requires a plan to merge all member districts of a supervisory union into a single district. It could also include the merger with a supervisory district. So for purposes of illustration only, Chittenden South is engaged has a study committee looking at whether to pursue an accelerated merger. If for some reason they wanted to move forward and they wanted to bring Winooski on as a partner, that whole entity would be eligible for accelerated incentives. So there are possibilities for supervisory districts. That's what Essex Town is doing. They are their own single district. And so they're forming up with Chittenden Central. They're going to have a vote in November to see whether to form a unified district. Again, the same type of requirements apply. A 900 student count has to be operational within a year, and you agree to provide the secretary with data on the system performance. These are the big sort of headline grabbers. So there's a 5-year homestead tax rate reduction starting at 10 cents, and it goes down 2 cents every year for 5 years. The other incentives are virtually identical for other activity you do beyond the accelerated phase, with the exception of the 5-year tax rate reduction. That starts at 10 cents.
So I don't want to focus too much on the financials right now.
Right.
However,
Right.
with those reductions that all of these folks that are going to be getting an accelerated transition, somebody's got to pick up the
Right.
burden of that.
Yep.
Right.
So we're
it's going
state.
to get spread out across
Correct.
everybody else.
Correct. We were a statewide funding system. There was no separate appropriation for these. I will say, when they modeled this in the legislature, I think they modeled 10 moving forward. The impact on the ed fund was very minimal. And it's also important to recognize that because we are a statewide system, the choices that are made in other communities around the state have an impact on our community as well. And so to the extent that unification or larger systems results in efficiencies over time, the system will benefit from that. These tax rate reductions are not intended to provide a tremendous amount of tax relief for places that move forward. They're intended to be a bridge between the tax rates that folks have today and the unified tax rate. So when you think about multiple districts coming together to form a single tax rate, and you have some districts whose taxes will go down and some whose taxes will go up. That's the way that works. So
Why would anybody's go down?
if you are a member of a group of districts whose tax rate is high, and you become part of as a result of the merger, you're with districts that have a lower tax rate. When you bring all those tax rates together, the ones with the higher taxes will go to, you're averaging out tax rates.
When we looked at it before, we looked at
Yeah, it was the reds,
deal
right?
with Burlington, and ultimately Winooski's tax rate would go up. Burlington's arguably wouldn't have come down too much, but it would have come down based on adding the extra. You probably wouldn't even be able to tell in dollars and cents, but
Colchester and Milton are much closer.
when you average them out, you're gonna get some level.
Some winners and losers.
Yep.
And so the tax rate reductions are really designed to build a bridge from the tax rates of today to the unified tax rate several years down the road. There are a lot of districts in Vermont that receive small schools grants. We all pay for those. Those are going to be phased out. But if a new entity is created and any of the participating districts had those grants, they can keep them. There's some transition aid, declining enrollment protection, which is a feature of our funding formula that protects against sudden losses in student population. That's being eliminated in FY21. So I don't think you have a phantom student population in Winooski, but there are some districts that are able to count more students than they actually have because of this feature of the funding formula. Again, comes at a cost to the rest of us. And if for some reason a new system sells a school building, they'll be exempt from a requirement to repay state aid. So that's the accelerated path. There is a lot of activity occurring. We're having votes in November, a bunch of votes in March, and I think a few later. And so you'll all be able to see how that all unfolds. There's also incentives for action if you approve a different plan of merger that's not a single pre-K-12 district. I'm not going to really cover that with you guys because it's just getting into territory you don't need to worry about. But there is another option for districts that are able to, so say, you're not going to make any structural changes by next July. You're not going to put a plan to the voters by next July. If upon discussion, analysis, discussions with neighboring districts, the consensus is we could form a different district, a larger district, but we're not going to do that until 2018. The law allows for that level of timing. There's no date on which you have to have a vote of the electorate. You just have to be operational by July 1 of 2017. That new district would be eligible to receive incentives so long as you serve at least 900 students. Is that clear? Okay. Again, the incentives are pretty similar, with the exception of moving from a 5-year tax rate reduction to a 4-year tax rate reduction. During the first 4 years, tax rates can't increase or decrease more than 5% a year. So there's that protection from, as you're merging into a single rate, you're not going to experience an increase or decrease in your tax rates. So the third path is another route to 2019, and that's for districts that aren't going to take action to voluntarily reorganize themselves and do not meet the preferred structure. There are certain actions that those districts need to take by November 30th of 2017. The board of the district has to evaluate the district's ability to meet the goals of the act and meet with other school boards in the region. And then you have to submit a proposal to either retain your current governance structure or form a different structure to the Secretary and State Board of Education. And that proposal has to demonstrate how the district will be able to achieve the goals of the act and the specific actions that will be taken in order to accomplish the goals. So that's by the end of 2017. Starting next fall, so they're piloting the work this year. Starting next fall, the education quality review process will be up and running. So evaluating districts' ability to meet education quality standards. The agency is also going to be monitoring governance activity that's happening statewide. And then based on the results of the quality reviews and governance activity, including the proposals that the secretary receives from districts, he or she is charged with developing a statewide plan to transition all districts to sustainable governance structures. That plan goes to the state board in the spring of 2018. The state board has several months to take testimony, make changes, or amend the plan, and then finally adopt it at the end of November in 2018 with an implementation date of July 1, 2019. So that is how you get to 2019. The statewide plan can't force districts to lose choice or pay tuition, and it won't include interstate school districts, regional career tech center school districts, or districts that voluntarily merge into the preferred structure or one of the other structures that's eligible to receive incentives under the law. So, any questions about that, the paths? Any reactions?
Yeah, so sitting here today, preferred pre-K-12, close to the 900.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm getting out of this is that we could have the ed quality standard a review to see where we sit, providing that that is relatively acceptable to whomever that might be acceptable to. A waiver to maintain being just below the 900 in the governance structure would be an option.
That is an option. I don't know that it would be characterized as a waiver. It would just be in the statewide plan. The secretary or agency would say, Winooski is meeting the goals of the act. They satisfy 2 out of the 3 criteria for a preferred district. And it looks like population-wise, they're not going to see a drop-off in the next 5 to, I mean, that's part of your thinking and analysis has to be, where are we headed as a system?
Yep.
Because if you find yourself 2 years from now down 100 students, that'll be perhaps a tougher case to make.
Right. But the ed quality standards and where you are on that evaluation seems to be a key component.
That is a key component. And the other goals of the act are operational efficiencies, and being able to provide those opportunities at a cost that taxpayers can support.
Quality, quantity.
So part of it is knowing where you sit today, and part of it is trying to get a handle of where you might be headed, and really be, I think as Sean alluded to, thinking about how do we leverage the strength of the position that we have today to plan for where we're going to be, not just in 2019, but beyond. So, any other reactions or questions?
Nicole, do you have any sense? I have not heard anything in the last year or so about school choice, the high school level, as it has been. Aside from the fact that it's being utilized less and less because the money is no longer following the student. Have you heard anything about that? Has it been a part of this discussion at all? Because when I think about expanded opportunities, particularly at the high school level, which is a piece for us to explore, and also students, I think, being attracted to a proficiency-based environment in Winooski that's going to be kind of on board before a lot of others. There's an opportunity there for kids to have some more choice and move around, but it doesn't feel like the policy and the finances fit right now.
Right. So, I mean, it is such a complicated question.
Yeah.
And it's complicated by challenges associated with both operating a district and essentially paying tuition for students to leave your district. So it becomes difficult for boards to predict and manage costs when when you have both of those things happening at once. There are always concerns about equity, so in access. So to the extent that you provide choice, are all students able to exercise that opportunity, because transportation isn't a barrier, for example. So these have been sort of the backdrop to any state level policy considerations. I think certainly locally conversations about if we create a larger district, could we offer our students more intra-district choice? That's been seen as a benefit, not necessarily at the high school level, but at the elementary and middle grades in particular. If there are a couple of different middle schools in that system that could be accessed by students, that's seen as a positive. There are supervisory unions that have more than one high school, talking about if they became a larger district, they could sort of create a magnet school type approach. But so I think it's always, it comes up, I wouldn't say on an annual basis, but pretty regularly, and it quickly gets into that tension between cost and equity of opportunity. So
You think of ways to attract students to get to 900?
What's that?
You think of making this look good to get to 900?
Well, yeah, always. There's a lot of different paths to that.
Yeah.
But, no, I just think about kind of what's emerging
Yeah.
on the the curriculum side. And, you know, we're way ahead of the curve, and I think we really have something to offer.
Yeah.
We're very different from everybody, most districts around us, you know, and so how do you know, but we have kids who would probably really enjoy having a comprehensive high school experience at Colchester or Burlington or South Burlington, or maybe going there for half the day or a couple courses and then being in a more personalized environment here. So how do we arrange that, you know, so that we truly are in a student-centered learning environment, and kids have particularly high school kids have a lot of choices.
Right.
And so there's nothing preventing
Right.
boards from coming together and having discussions about money following the student, or, you know, a Chittenden County-wide arrangement. I mean, that has been in place in the past. I think it's been disrupted by some state policy initiatives, but I think those are the kinds of conversations that you can be having right now in terms of how do we think about leveraging the assets of every community in order to better respond to students, and certainly to the extent there are roadblocks to doing that, you know, working with your legislators to help them understand those is really important. So, your options and your partners. So when you think about this map, and who you might be talking to, it's really, you know, I think, talking to neighboring pre-K-12 districts. So, because those are systems that have the same operating structure that you have. Introducing new complexities by combining supervisory union or operating structures and then having to create a supervisory union, that's not the direction the state's trying to move into. So to the extent there are partners, you have some in the area, and they're really the other neighboring pre-K-12 districts. So some options for Winooski are to commence discussions, and I know that there have been discussions. I know that not that long ago there was a study about what to do in terms of a partnership with Burlington and other neighbors. So look at what previous work has been done. You could establish an exploratory committee to think about, in the context of the goals of the Act, how could we better work together? If that plan of working together leads to, you know what, maybe we should create a single district, then a committee would be formed, they would develop a plan, it would have to go to the voters, etc. Or you could develop a plan to retain the current structure, make the case to the secretary that doing so satisfies the goals of the Act. Or there is an option to not do any of that and wait and see what happens at the state level. I'll tell you, the only activity that sets you up for tax rate reductions or other incentives is one that involves voluntary merger. I think in Winooski you're not as concerned about loss of small schools, you're not concerned at all about loss of the small schools grant or the ADM hold harmless, so that's not going to be a factor in your thinking. But
A lot of carrots, not any sticks. In that sense, right?
yeah, right. So that's, I think, the landscape as I see it for that aspect of Act 46. So we can
heavily weighted to the structure piece here.
Well, it's pretty, I mean, I can't tell you what to do about the excess spending threshold. I was talking to Sean earlier today, and I said, this is such a district-specific conversation that it's very difficult for me to come in as someone from the state and say, this is how you should respond. I can explain what it is. It was designed to address the fact that legislators heard from constituents last election cycle, property taxes in Vermont are too high and they needed to do something about it. And while I think there is a belief, and I think it's borne out by research, that creating systems that operate at scale will produce efficiencies to the state over the long term, that's a longer term proposition. So when they're in an environment where immediate relief, where they believe they need to provide immediate relief to taxpayers, this mechanism was the one that was decided upon. There were, I will say, a number of options that were considered and vetted. None of them were good. And this one, I think, keys off of the fact that there is a lot of variability. It was believed to be more equitable in terms of its application. So an earlier iteration said there's a 2% cap. If you present a budget, or if voters approve a budget that exceeds 2%, the budget will have been deemed to fail. That's an incredibly blunt instrument. This says every district receives an allowable growth percentage, and that's based on their prior year's ed spending per equalized pupil, and there's a range. So there are some districts in the state that have 0% allowable growth because they have the highest cost per student in the state. And then it varies down from 0% to 5.5%. The districts that have 5.5% allowable growth spend the least amount per pupil in the state. So it was intended to allow for, or to recognize the fact that there is variability across the state in terms of how much is spent per pupil. It basically makes some changes to the excess spending penalty, which has been in place since Act 68, I believe. And that is, previously, if the district spent more than a certain percentage above the statewide average, so 123% above the statewide average, any amount you spend above that is double counted, so double taxed essentially. That system has been replaced by the allowable growth percentage. So if the district exceeds your allowable growth, which is different for every district, so Winooski, you're at 2.75%. Any amount you spend above that will be double taxed. It's for the budgets you're preparing this fall and the subsequent year's budgets. There are some exemptions to the amount used to calculate education spending per pupil. I'd say the main categories of exemptions are capital spending, some excess special ed costs, and then a lot of costs associated with tuition. So in districts that solely pay tuition, they don't have an operating budget because they don't operate a school. Arguably, they don't have control over their costs, so a lot of those costs are exempted. And any assessments paid by teachers who enroll in the state teachers retirement system. So acknowledging that there's been some changes made to that system. But the exemptions are pretty limited. And the impact is potentially significant. So what we're working on right now is collecting information from folks about the consequences associated with implementing this provision of the Act. Our hope is to have a conversation at our conference next week. We've set aside an hour for our conversation. Legislators will be there, and we will continue to have conversations through the remainder of the fall and as we head into the session about whether or not this provision can be tweaked in a way that responds to the reality of what's happening when budgets are developed. It's one thing to run some spreadsheets, and I'll tell you, of all the numbers and scenarios that I saw run, this was the most accommodating and still accomplishing a goal. So the goal is to keep statewide growth at 2%. So to recognizing that, you know, the rate of inflation is less than that, and we're educating fewer students, legislators made the decision to set a target of 2% growth statewide. They didn't contemplate the fact that we're seeing health insurance premium rate increases at 7.9%. And it, as I said, it's one thing to run numbers on a spreadsheet. It's another thing to develop budgets and see what this means for kids. So the more concrete information that you can provide your legislators, and you can provide to us so that we can start to build a case for why this may not be the right approach. But it is the law. And the other thing to be aware of is that if you create a new district, it's possible that one of these years would not apply, because if you create a new entity, you have no prior year spending.
I thought it was up to 5 if you create a new district. Didn't say you could go up to 5% increase?
Well, but if you are creating a new entity and your allowable growth rate keys off of your ed spending from the prior year, if you don't have a prior year, then they can't give you an allowable growth rate.
Right.
So for some,
governed there by your ability to pass a budget in some kind of a growth that's exorbitant.
well, it depends on when you become operational. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we are the lowest per pupil spending in Chittenden County. Does that mean that we have the highest, like the 2.75 is the highest allowable in the county?
I would imagine, although I don't have my spreadsheet with me, but that's the way it was built.
Gotcha. So Burlington's would be lower and Bolton's would be like 0 and other places.
So the Chittenden East is a new, so they're a new district. They have now a single, so Bolton doesn't have a tax rate anymore.
Right.
Because they're part of that larger system.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure.
So that's doing what it was designed to do then.
Yes.
Yeah, this actually goes with the whole thing. So
Yeah.
it's pushing you to look.
What? The what?
It's going to push districts to look at other options.
Yeah, right.
And collaborating with other districts.
Which was most of the goal.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and really, concern about costs absolutely are a backdrop to this, but I think I can say that for the legislators that voted for this bill, it was about ensuring that we have a strong and sustainable public education system moving into the future, and that there are serious signs of stress on the system. And certainly this provision could arguably be construed to exacerbate those stressors. So that's one reason I think it's very important that we document that and make the case both to our legislators but also to our communities.
So Nicole, like 2 years ago, we had an increase from our end of like 2%, and the state had an increase of like 7.5%. And so together it was like 9%, right? And the year before that, we were like negative 2%, and the state's was like 6%, and so it went up to 4%. Is that 2.75% limit our own limit, or is that the combined state and?
So you're talking about the base amount and the tax rate increase.
Right.
So it's your ed spending per equalized pupil, the
Okay.
amount that increases over the prior year.
Okay, so in our case, that's the 2% and the negative 2%.
It's the equalized per equalized pupil spending that we did last year. We're allowed to go up 2.75% from that
Right.
without taking a double taxation penalty.
But I'm trying to think, so since I've been here, we haven't done anything over 2.75%, right? In fact, we've been under 2.
So it depends on are you talking about your tax rate increases? Or are you talking
know.
about, right?
You can tell
So-
me, right?
I'm talking about taxes in the first statement. Yeah.
What I'm trying to figure out is how that 2.75 compares to what we've done in the past.
Yep.
And if that is really a
We've gotten
limitation,
close.
or if it just feels like a limitation.
It is a limitation.
It's a limitation.
It's on the expense, yeah. I mean, think about it as just an expense increase year to year.
Right. So like, do you remember off the top of your head what we increased expenses last year?
It was 3 something.
3 something, 3.6
Yeah, and the
maybe?
year before it was 6.
So
We
when you,
kept it tight last year.
Okay.
The thing you got to remember doing this is teachers are going to have over usually a good percentage increase
Yeah.
too. And since they make up 87% of your budget,
No.
you know, it's really
that's why the health insurance increase is a big factor, and whatever, boards entered into collective bargaining agreements with their employees in an environment where this wasn't a factor, and some are in the middle of an agreement that has built-in 3% salary increases,
Yes.
Right.
and then a 7.9% increase in health insurance. That adds up pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
so.
So the other thing that I
For
noted
that.
in here was kind of interesting is the excess spending under Act 46 is defined as the per equalized pupil amount of the district's education spending, plus any amount required to be added from a capital construction reserve that is in excess of the district's per equalized pupil amount of education spending. So
Mm-hmm.
anything else that you throw in there is counted in there too. So it's all back to the equalized pupil spending change, no matter how you do it.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Between this, VHI's plans going away this January 1, 17, it's going to be an interesting contract season to try to navigate through getting this leveled out with the current healthcare plans and not overlooking the fact that we're got an end point that we don't know anything about beyond that from healthcare. So it's going to be an interesting negotiation. I think our timing is pretty good. Our 3-year contract hopefully got some good trust. It expires in June. And hopefully that trust and faith can go a long way in getting us to navigate the next 2 years, 3 years until we get something that works.
Yep.
Better. So.
Or we get innovative and do a living contract.
I think
We're really going to have to look outside the box this time.
Yeah.
we are in an incredibly dynamic time.
We are.
And trust, relationships, communication is critical, as it is in any type of change environment. And so I think you all have set yourselves up pretty well to have these difficult conversations. And to the extent we can be a resource.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was going to say, is that the good news is that there is a solid foundation of relationships, a couple of good negotiation sessions. There is tremendous work on the board side with the end statement. We have had relative stability in leadership, and the high school has really been moving on proficiency-based work along with the middle school, and so I think some organizations are not starting with that, and they're doing exactly what Nicole mentioned at the beginning, which was going straight to that structural piece, and they're missing a really important opportunity. We have a lot of that in place, which is a great place to start. it's going to be hard when we do get to the structural and we get to the financial conversations, but at least we have that vision.
That's right.
It's going to hold us and ground us in the work.
And I think our common thing is always the students first. So, and that's one thing that the whole entire district agrees on,
Yeah.
and the state for that matter. So, just students first.
All right.
And it's evident in the work that you do. So, thank you.
Thank you.
It's only just begun, always. Unfortunately, I guess, it always gives you something to look forward to,
Yeah.
getting through it. So,
Yeah. No, but it is hard work. So.
well, that'll lead nicely, that last piece will lead certainly nicely into our
You do all the work. You just present it to
superintendent
us.
evaluation.
Thanks a lot.
Yes,
Nicole.
thanks, Nicole.
Thank
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
See you soon.
And maybe you could come back after this process has had some experience, and all of us have had some experience, and whether it's spring or fall of next year, and kind of check in on what's happening. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
thanks.
Absolutely. You're my favorite board to visit.
You say that to all of us.
I said that last.
You know, if we're going to try to get parity, though, for teacher pay elsewhere, like, it's never going to happen now with this regime. And so,
Not with the student-teacher ratios that we need. No.
yeah, right. So in order, right,
That is, the other piece of it is
we would have to bulk up our classrooms to what, like 30 to 1?
the gazette.
Yeah, and who wants to work here anyway if that's going to happen?
Right.
So, I mean, that really means that we're either going to have to, and if we're struggling to keep people here for a long time because they cut their teeth here and then they get recruited away by better salaries in other districts in the county, then, like, unless we can come up with like 8 other things to keep them here, we're kind of cooked.
Right, and I agree to some degree salary is going to go there. But I also believe that work environment is a key component to getting somebody out of bed. I understand
Absolutely.
You're never going to get there completely without, I don't even think you have to match the salary.
Yeah.
I think you have to be somewhere in a ballpark, but having a
Yeah.
climate and a culture of innovation,
Right.
of flexibility from a teaching perspective,
Totally.
that whole piece, to the degree that we can keep that, I think it's going to make up for some of the salary piece that we can't get to.
So I'm a
based
little
on this.
disappointed with that comment, honestly, because we've just been working with Adam for the past 2 years
Right.
of how to get our teachers up to a more
Yep.
even level.
Yep.
And not saying the best paid teachers, but
Right.
not
Competitive.
right. So I still think we need to keep that in the forefront,
I-
no matter what we're thinking.
I wouldn't argue against that, but to try to do that in this environment where we're going to get double taxed,
Yeah, but we
for
can at least
something
make
over
a
the
plan
end,
of
over the
doing
limit.
it.
I'm
Look
okay
at
with the
start
plan.
with the plans and look outside of the box
Right.
and be creative
Yep.
when we do that.
Well, and Jen, I think we've always known, since we've been working with Adam and looking at the concept of competitiveness, that it doesn't happen in 1 or 2
It doesn't, but I'm just saying that
But to have a long-term plan.
we have been, I personally have been working on this for 4 or 5 years, okay? So, and it's always just, still there is no plan, and we need to really focus on, because if we can't do it all at once, great, but let's show that we are looking to do that and make a plan to do it instead of, not really touching it. We're just talking about it still, and it's,
Right.
Yeah.
just saying, that's going to go
Yeah.
much further than, so then if you don't get to, because we're restrained, this is going to be the great opportunity we need to have those conversations, make the plan, and just see what happens.
Find a way to get there as you can.
And it may be having Adam come in or finding us another resource to help us make that plan.
I
But
meant to ask, Nicole, do you guys know, is this a temporary cap or is this a cap for the
2
foreseeable?
years,
2 years
now
right
is
at this
the
point.
statute.
2 years, okay, and then up or down or the same, we don't know. That makes it really hard to talk to Adam and say, okay, for these 2 years we're kind of stuck, but after that we promise,
yeah, but there's he's talked about doing different parts, having where every year we come back and we look at a certain aspect of their contracts that
Okay.
aren't solidified for 3 years. So like that's what I mean, when you look outside of the different types, so like maybe we don't do their salaries for the next 3 years and we look at it every year, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just think we need to really,
Okay. I'm into it. I like showing that we are interested in making all that happen despite the constraints that are.
because I feel like
Laid
we've
upon
done
us.
such good work that that's the last piece that needs to be done to really keep it going forward.
Yeah, my comment wasn't aimed at
No,
not,
I know,
not
I'm just,
doing that. It's aimed
I know,
at
but it sounded like,
not getting
you know,
focused or fixated on the fact that if we can't do the salaries to the midpoint, then we can't keep teachers here. And I guess I would say that that's not necessarily the case. There are other things that we can do to help.
yes.
Not
Absolutely.
That notwithstanding.
And I think it's being done, and that's why have the great teachers we have,
Yeah.
Can continue.
so.
All right. More to come on that as we go through the budget season. It'll be the next year and a half. So we'll see where we go with that. Next item on the agenda, item 7, is on the monitoring report of the superintendent performance. I originally had this in September to make sure that it's in plenty of time we just did a 3-year contract in the spring. So, but I wanted to make sure we do this in the fall. Based on the previous year assessment, and if there are any concerns, that we get them out on the table and early. What I've put into the board material this time is a tracking report that I've been using based on the monitoring reports that Sean has done through. We've gone through the full gamut once. The one we are seeing tonight is the second time through for 2.1, which is treatment of staff and students. Based on what I see here, the sum, and we'll keep rolling it each year to incorporate at least a couple more. I would say that the job that Sean has done here is meeting the intent. It's helping us accomplish our board policies, and it was in the boundaries established by our policies on executive limitations.
Yep.
Accepting this is accepting the work that Sean has done in the both the write-ups themselves, but in the harder work of actually getting things done. So
moved.
I would accept motion to approve
So moved.
the evaluation as it stands. All right, and with that on the table, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of accepting this, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Very good. Next, student report to the board. Turn it over to the...
Brighten up our night, ladies. Come on.
Yeah. Oh man, it was fun hearing that spiel again.
Yeah, I bet.
All right. So October, it's a great month. So homecoming was a few weeks ago, which was the last week of September, and there are lots of high spirits and lots of bittersweet moments. The high school was summoned into the gym for a pep rally on the Friday of homecoming weekend. Sports teams players were called out and recognized as per usual, and there was a dance put on by 3 students, and there was a bunch of cheering. All varsity teams did lose their games, but that did not put a damper on the student spirits.
Good.
So student spirits were especially high at the indefinitely last homecoming football game of Spartan history.
Oh, yeah.
And the end score was 70-84, which was actually pretty good, reaching NFL levels. And there are a lot of
NBA levels.
Okay. And in the same weekend, on September 26th, there was some conflicting with some of the soccer players, but the middle and high school bands traveled to Springfield, Massachusetts to march during Vermont Day in the Big E, which is the biggest fair in New England, located in Springfield, Mass. The band was given free admission to the Biggie, and we spent about 4 hours enjoying the fair before we spent about an hour marching around the fairgrounds along with other bands from Vermont. And that was pretty fun, and that usually happens only every 3 years. On October 7th, Winooski participated in National Walk to School Day. About 30-40 elementary students gathered around 7:20ish at Rite Aid and walked to the school together. Some pushover band students were asked to play a little ditty to get people excited and pumped about walking, and it was just a little peppy song that we would play, a very quick, short tune, and it would help boost the morals and spirits, wake some kids up, get them excited to walk to school.
Wake the band students up, really.
As for prom stuff, prom committee has started working on stuff for this year's prom for our senior class. Fundraisers are still in planning throughout the year. There will be many different fundraisers, such as our current fundraiser, the candle fundraiser. Next up, we'll have sales fundraisers such as the summer salad sale. We'll have a sale at Papa Frank's, I believe, and there'll be more coming up. And of course, the theme and the venue is still unknown to the public, and we're going to try to keep it on the lowdown.
But it's known? It's just not known to the public?
Not known to 99% of the student population. Let's say
somebody
that.
knows.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. 4 students from Winooski's band were accepted into the district's concert band, including
Alright.
Rainbow and I.
Hey.
The District 3 high school band auditions occur at WMHS every year, and up until this year, they have not seen any Winooski students auditioning, but with a new system of recommendations from the band teachers that the district has started, our band teacher, Mr. Eggers, recommended 4 students, 2 flutists, this one saxophone, and 1 percussionist, me, and all 4 of us were accepted.
All right.
Yeah. And,
Randy.
Yeah, it was
That's
awesome.
great.
Some field trips that occurred. The entire team journey took a hiking field trip to Mount Mansfield on October 1st. I can't really tell you how all that went because I asked my sister, and all I get from her is complaining. But I'm sure it was a lot of fun with the other students. The Partnership for Change team of both Burlington High School students and Winooski High School students took a field trip to New York City.
They're currently there.
Yeah, they're currently there, yeah. 4 students and a couple of teachers from Winooski left for New York City yesterday on a journey of looking at innovative schools in the New York City area in hopes of establishing new ideas to the Burlington and Winooski High School area. They will be returning on Wednesday. Since the beginning of the school year, the iLab has had a 3D printer located in their room. In there. Actually, I think it's in the office now. Anyone is allowed to learn how to work the machine. Some students are using it for their iLab projects, most notably a project on creating iPhone cases and fishing lures.
Is
Those are
it
separate
donated or did we
projects.
buy that?
Can you, does it really work?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's so
Like,
cool.
you know, like on TV where it makes like little dolls and whatnot?
Yeah. People
Yeah.
have already made stuff. One of my friends already has the basis for his fishing lure.
So will it be demonstrated at the Share night?
Absolutely.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's going to be super cool. And then on to sports. The middle school girls soccer team had a home game against Virgins today. They started at 4. Their last game is a home game is against Missisquoi on the 14th. The middle school boys soccer team had a home game against Virgins today as well. They started at 4. Their last game is also against Missisquoi on the 14th. Varsity girls soccer team has had a home game on the 14th. They play against Enosburg at 6. Their last game is an away game against BFA Fairfax on the 17th. Varsity boys soccer has a home game today against Enosburg. They started at 6. Hopefully they missed the rain. Their last game is a home game against BFA Fairfax on the 16th. Varsity football has a home game on the 16th. They play against BFA Fairfax at 7. The last football game for Winooski is on the 23rd. Their opponent is currently undetermined. Rainbow has a couple more.
Yes, there are 2 things I forgot to add that are coming later at the end of the month. There are PSATs scheduled on October 28th, And there's STEM night too, which is the science, technology, engineering, mathematics night, which we had a continuation from last year's STEM night, which was very successful. And so this year it will be the similar thing where we have different science classes present information about what they're doing in their classes so far, and there will definitely be a demonstration of the 3D printer, and there will be dinner from 6 to 6:30, and then the night lasts from 6:30 to 8 o'clock approximately. And the poster's made by me.
Congratulations.
Also, one very last thing. Rainbow's birthday is on October 28th.
Which is the day of PSATs.
Yeah. It's
Best
like a
birthday
nice
present.
Birthday present. Yeah.
So you get to get the crack of dawn.
Yeah.
Wow. Do they have lights for the soccer players who play there?
Yeah, they play at a
Oh,
football
okay.
field.
Yes.
All right, gotcha. But they start at 6, they're under the lights, right?
Oh yeah, it was raining. It was raining.
Yeah.
Poor kid.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
The only thing I would add is that I wanted to let the board know that they are working on succession plans since LaDanya is a senior and won't be returning as a student rep to the board next year.
Yeah.
And so they're already talking it up and going to do some publicity at the community meetings. I've been tapping some people on the shoulder, and we'll get the application out in January or February. And so they're ahead of the game on it.
You guys are cultivating some prospects?
You got some good ideas.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Good.
She's leaving me.
Yeah.
There you
I
go.
don't know.
We'll fill it in, fill it in very well, I'm sure. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So report on the VSBA regional meeting and the VHI Fall Forum.
Yeah, the regional meeting, I don't think anyone was able to attend, and Nicole mentioned some pieces of it. It was primarily, is a lot of what she described to you tonight at that meeting. And then, I don't know, the fall forum, if you guys want to add anything about that.
Oh,
Beehive.
Beehive.
Yeah, I guess the nutshell of that is, again,
Changes.
current VHI's a health insurance that we use. All the plans that they've got right now terminate July or
January 1st.
December 31st
Right.
of 16. And then after that, they'll have new plans in place, so that we'll be ready to move forward. They decided on the middle of the fiscal school year because of the trouble you get into with insurance if you do it in mid-year with deductibles and where you are with everything there. So that's going to be an interesting transition or crossover point. The other piece that I remember is we mentioned it here tonight. Planning assumption for the insurance is 7.8, 7.9%. Suspected to be slightly less than that when all things sugar out, but you never know where to go. But you put that in with the 2.75 overall per student, and continues with the challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah, to I think where you're going with the whole piece. So.
Do we have any idea, hypothetically, what an 8% increase would mean to our overall budget here?
We've been doing the modeling. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head.
Do you think it's near 2.75?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Not just the insurance, but when you start doing the modeling around what we know and what we forecast in terms of the teacher salary,
Right.
we're way above the 2.75.
Gotcha.
So the 2.75 really factors to about $325,000, and the initial modeling that we're looking at is in the $500,000 range. So unless those numbers change, and depending on what the outcome of negotiation, there's some work to be done there.
Okay.
For sure. The VSBA conference, 22nd, 23rd, were either of you guys going to be able, I know you're pretty tied up, and Julian, your commitment?
Morocco.
Morocco.
I think Tori's going, isn't she?
Usually, she has been.
Yeah. Is she in New York? Is she doing the New York thing?
What's that?
Did she go to New York with the partnership?
No, she actually had a family
Oh.
conflict for tonight, moving it to Tuesday rather than Wednesday.
That's right. That's right.
All right, so more to come as we go again.
I mean, the only thing I'd add about the VHI Fall Forum, I thought it was good. You know, the three of us were there. Brent Liver, who's the chief negotiator, was there. Rebecca Goulet, our finance manager. You know, for us to sit in the same room and hear the same message.
Mhm.
And I felt really confident walking out about the work that VHI's doing. Like
They're really on top of
They
it.
have.
Mark Haig and Laura Soares, you know, I mean, they're learning a lot, but they're on top of it.
Great.
And you know, and they were asking for some input about the number of plans and the types of plans, and so I think that's going to be really helpful, and it just gave me confidence walking out of there that there's good work being done that we can rely on in the future.
Yeah. They went through definitions of FSAs and HSAs and HRAs and all kinds of things that are with and peripheral to some of the benefits. So it's-
HSAs, huh? Is that where it's going?
Yeah, I mean,
What's that?
yeah, they definitely.
Like higher deductible HSA
Yep.
and shared cost type stuff.
Yeah.
Again, that'll be part of our creativity
Yeah,
in our negotiation process. So it was actually really good to go and
I
listen.
bet. Yeah, well
Yeah.
done. Thanks for doing that.
All right. Anything else on that? Again, we'll have many more discussions to come. The next one here, the next topic is a continuation of what we've done in the past. It is the board's reflection on our
I think
governing
we should wait until
policies.
Tori's here to do that.
I'm thinking that we may want to, because we've got others being written as we go through the year, to have the discussion about, do we want to do the evaluation of our performance against these, this one happens to be governing styles, to the highest level, or to each component as we go down through, if you deem it to be okay. So I think you may be right that having Tori and Mohammed in the room when we have that discussion, so that
Because it
later
really
when
is
we do.
a bigger, broader interpretation as a board, not an individual. So I think, we should have all five of us.
Right,
to be
because
able
part
to
of that
do
discussion I want to be, we originally started with a single write-up and then the board looking to see whether that made sense. Does it make sense to have two or three of us write it up?
Mm-hmm.
Or I'd hate to do it in this session here, it just take too long to
Right.
Yep.
wordsmith it in this environment, but
Yep.
I think it's important for us to look at, are we in fact looking at these, but moreover, it sets the precedent that you're gonna look at them year to year. Are you still on track? Are you still holding the governance model key to what it is, to all that you do?
Right.
So, if that is okay, then we'll put this one into the November discussion. We'll use.
We can use this one, but I can switch it over too to another format, Sean's format,
To the superintendent.
Okay.
monitor.
in my interpretation of what I would think it would look like. That
Okay.
way we can do both.
All right, can we ask that you do that then, and
Yeah.
we have that as
Yeah.
the model, then we can
Yeah, I'll
determine
do
then.
it sooner rather than later since it's still fresh on my mind.
There you go, that's what I like,
Smoking.
Uh-huh.
perfect. All right, good, thank you. And then, as we come down, policies, we've got transportation back. And transportation was inadvertently left when Sandy was on vacation last time. We didn't get this one into the policy. Very short one, this one. Recommendations in front of you.
And I apologize that the recommendations didn't get into the packet ahead of time either.
This one, if you hadn't noticed, at 48 pages was a little on the long side. This- Not the policy itself, but the posting.
So, I'm gonna speak to the recommendation that's on the page that I just gave you to transportation. In that I did a lot of striking in the recommendation of language. I felt like there was a lot of detail there that wasn't necessarily needed. and a lot of it is spoken to in the procedures. The other piece is with the ongoing committee work that's being done around student transportation. I think it's better to keep it really crisp at this point, and then if in fact there's some significant changes, then I would come back to the board to recommend that we revisit that policy in light of whatever may come out of that work.
You talking about the Parents for Change work?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because that effort seems to be getting a little wind in the sails at this point. I think it's
Yeah.
moving forward.
Right, we're
A little
meeting
bit.
we're meeting this Friday to look at some possibilities.
Okay.
So,
So really, in essence, what it says is, we are a small community, and while recognizing that, we do only furnish transportation in certain circumstances.
Yep.
And then those cases are in procedures.
Right. Right, and then you struck this part about how far students are, since it's not true, I guess.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
No, that isn't accurate, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
the sentence here on the top recommendation under I, while recognizing compactness of Winooski, the district has decided not to furnish transportation under this policy. However, will provide transportation in certain circumstances. That is the wording that's in there now, less the
Yes.
strikeout, right?
Yep.
Can we just? I understand what you're saying, what it's saying, but that we're not providing transportation, but we will provide it in certain circumstances.
To make it a more positive statement.
I think, yeah.
Has decided to only provide transportation in the certain circumstances.
In certain
described
circumstances
in
as
the
defined in the
procedures or something.
procedures.
Yeah.
How is I different from II? Doesn't II say it all?
So what are you changing?
Right.
So I have it for the minute.
Oops, sorry, do you have the
We haven't changed
copy?
anything yet.
Nothing
Oh,
yet.
I have a copy. I just
Yeah,
want to make
nothing.
sure I do.
Yeah, it is redundant, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, with
Yeah.
those changes, I think II says what you're saying, Mike.
You're right, yep.
And that's pretty much it, right? And then
Right, so if you just
we go to
strike
procedures.
after the compactness of Winooski and then go down to II, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or you could just.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were saying, is just strike the rest of the first section. And 2 follows it directly. Right, I think that's
Well,
exactly.
let me see if I
what-
can read it. It makes sense.
Yep.
Well,
While
do you-
recognizing the compactness of Winooski, the Winooski School District will provide transportation in certain cases as determined using the procedures attached to this policy.
Nope, different than that even.
Well, I would. I
Winooski
mean,
is a
Strike all
community
of that.
approximately 1.2, and then skip right to here. District will
Yeah.
provide transportation in certain
Okay.
circumstances as determined using the procedures attached to this policy.
yeah. Do we even need the 1.2? I mean, that's just a fact, right?
It is a statement of fact.
It's one policy.
What's that?
Yeah, one policy.
Do you need it? I guess is the question.
I don't think you
think
need
you
it,
need
right?
it.
I think just II.
So you're taking 1 or 2 out.
Well,
Don't know yet.
not quite sure
Still
yet.
not there.
But it seems to me, I mean, are we missing anything if we say the Winooski School District will provide transportation in certain cases as determined using the procedures attached to this policy?
No.
Does that leave a
No.
policy enough that, does that make enough of a policy statement to know what we're saying? It leaves things mainly in the procedure,
Right.
which is then in the staff's hands to develop that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right? Is it? I see. Yeah. Is it specific enough? So I don't think it changes anything from what's here. If we want to add something, then we should. But I think
Maybe
relative
you
to
can
what's on
add,
the page
will
now.
only provide transportation to certain cases.
So the model policy that you've got in here is, expands a little bit. It says where it is reasonable and necessary to enable a student entitled or required to attend an elementary or secondary school operated by the district may furnish transportation on our public roads to students who reside within the district. District may provide transportation to non-residents. I mean, that's not an issue here, so that could be stricken, right? Accordingly, the district has decided to furnish transportation or not under this policy. That's kind of a...
Yeah.
That was the statement you were trying to get away from.
Right.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the rest of this is mostly for districts that
Yeah, if you're doing
are
if you're
required to, so that doesn't even fit. And the procedures are outlining extracurricular activities, other school events, special needs, which would be taken into account. Will provide transportation in certain circumstances as determined using the policy attached. Procedures attached in this policy.
Yep.
So if we use just what's left in 2, where does that leave us open?
Yeah. I mean, so I don't think it leaves us open anywhere because truthfully, our transportation is pretty limited, right? That except
Extremely.
right. And so until the group comes up with new recommendations, and that's true. Like none of that, the other stuff is sort of editorial. The stuff that we struck out, and all of I is just sort of descriptive.
Right.
So we don't need any of that. And as Sean was saying, what's in 2 that struck out is redundant with procedures. So the policy.
I think the policy, you should, it's will only. So the Winooski School District will only provide transportation in certain cases. That way you're not leaving it open to interpretation.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Because by taking the other one out of not providing transportation, you're leaving it open to, all right, well,
Okay.
so just.
So what you're saying, Jen, though, is add the only, but that just one sentence is the policy.
Yeah, the top and.
Yeah, just what's in 2.
Right.
Yeah.
Just what's left
Yep.
in there with the only
Yep.
entered. So strike all of 1.
Strike all of them. Okay.
Yeah.
2.
And then 2 has will only provide,
Will.
and as is, the rest is stricken except for as determined using the procedures attached. And then if and when we get something to do with the transportation for the Parents for Change piece,
I'll come right back.
if it can't be put into procedures
Right.
and identified as such in procedures that are clear,
It should be able to put into
Then-
procedures.
we can leave it like that.
Yep. Okay.
So procedures doesn't have to come to the board to modify. Is that correct?
Nope.
Procedures are, right.
Okay.
I think in a lot of cases, though, I think they've been brought forward as an FYI,
Yeah.
but not necessarily for us to tweak and
Approval.
adjust.
Yeah. I mean, so I would be curious to look at the policy once they come back with recommendations, because it might be, because what it's missing if we leave it like that is any sort of intent, because like transportation has all kinds of impacts on equity, and, if Act 46 says we need to, be equitable, which is something that I think is sort of at the center of our work at
We
all
should
times.
exclude transportation costs from it.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. But if I suspect they'll come back with something that has to do with equity and that, justifies their recommendations in equity. And if that's the case, then we probably should put it in policy when it comes back. The procedures should follow the intent of the policy, and the policy will probably say something about equity. So I think it does make sense to look at the policy again once they come out with their recommendations, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Because we're
There's nothing to say we can't bring it back.
Yeah.
That's the, we want to make sure they stay up to date
Mhm.
and are clear and concise enough for not to get tripped into much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that this sort of rendering of the policies is maybe this is too strong, but it's sort of quietly discriminatory, against folks who have the furthest to walk and who may not have access to vehicles and that kind of stuff. No?
It's a walking community. And people choose to live in a walking community. That's one of the things of living in a walking community.
Right. Maybe. I mean, I think a lot of people live here because they can't afford anywhere else. And I think that when the winter comes and the sidewalks freeze and you have to walk on the street,
Burlington doesn't provide transportation either, and they're a way bigger community.
Yeah.
Well,
they got
they are
Looking
providing
into it?
some. Well, no, they work with CCTA so that students have their passes that get
That
them
they
on
can
the
use to
buses
take the bus.
within a certain range. They have it all worked out with, and that's one of the things that we're looking at.
Right. All the buses pull in there at 3 p.m. and they drop off in the morning and they got a big parking lot for them.
Right.
And some people do use that because they see them getting dropped off.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
Yeah.
And those are all the things that we're looking at.
Right,
Can
'cause
we work with
that-
CCTA so
be
that the
more
routes
equitable,
work better?
Make sure the
Can we-
kids all have access to that.
Yeah.
But I think doing anything with this now, in lieu of having some kind of a summary from that work,
Yep.
then we can
I'm
do
willing.
what we're looking at here, and then
Totally. I think we should
and the
let ourselves-
procedures and cross references that you've got down here are just changes to
Yeah, they're
pieces.
technical changes.
Okay, so when we bring it back, I think, Julian, your request was the policy and the procedures to have them in one place at one time.
Yep.
When we bring it back.
Yep. Okay.
Then we can do that. All right. Good.
Okay.
All right. So the next one then, next two actually, comes as 3 pieces. We don't have hazing policy at this point.
We
just
do.
chose to at this point bring back harassment and bullying.
Well, no. What happened was in the policy review cycle, hazing was reviewed, and can't remember whether there was too much revision. I don't think there was much, and it was approved last year sometime.
Okay.
Before this model policy came from the agency and VSBA. So we didn't know that they were working on combining all 3 of them at that point. So the board went ahead, reviewed hazing, approved it, and then in the review cycle, these 2 came up at the same time.
Okay.
And harassment of students and bullying of students.
Okay.
Which
So
really makes sense.
Yeah.
Right, so I think the first question then is based on what you've got in here, though the state, well, actually, they're all fairly lengthy and probably need to be. Thoughts up front about the combined one? Do we adopt a combined one versus the keeping the individuals?
I would say it makes sense because it's all relevant to the same.
Okay,
The procedures are probably all the same too.
pretty close, yeah. So if we do that, then we'll strike 4116A and 4116B and the hazing one that we just redid.
We would strike
Previous.
4116B, and which is prevention of bullying, and 4117, which is hazing,
Yeah.
and just
Combine 'em
rename
under-
it.
Okay.
We keep 4166,
And 4116A.
and rename it policy on the prevention of harassment, hazing, and bullying
There we go.
Okay.
of students.
All right.
And adopt the model
And
policy.
at that point, you can drop the A. Just, I mean, for
Right.
semantics,
Right, thank
semantics,
you.
you don't really need that either.
Thank you.
Let's call it 4166,
Okay.
just so we can.
So then,
Sorry, I'll stop.
so I had one nagging thought as I read through this thing, and that is the student reporting the harassment, bullying, hazing, or the staff recognizing it and bringing it forward. Nowhere in here did I see, though, a parent bringing it forward from what their child had brought home and having the parents' input be one possible avenue to bring that forward.
Good eye, good eye.
I'm not sure if I just didn't read it well, but I think that almost has to be an avenue to lodge at least the initial
Right.
complaint.
Well, everything that I've read, in, for example, in Appendix A of existing policy 4116A, designated employees, who the ones who we've designated to receive harassment complaints, it doesn't say who they can or cannot be from. So I don't remember, was
Okay.
there limiting language somewhere that you saw that said can only come from staff or students, or?
It was mostly just the way it read, that it was,
Well, on the page it says reporting complaints of hazing, harassment, and or bullying, which is maybe page 8. It's I.
Which policy are you in now?
that's the current one, right?
No, well, I don't think so. It's model procedures on the prevention of harassment, hazing, and bullying. So it's the model combined one.
Page on the side.
Doesn't have a page number on it, but there's a page 7 just before it. After the designated employees. So Appendix A, designated employees, on the next page is model procedures on the prevention of harassment, hazing, and bullying of students, reporting complaints of hazing, harassment, and or bullying. A, student reporting. B, school employee reporting. And then C is other reporting. Any other person who witnesses conduct should promptly report it. But it does not say anything about parents.
Right. It kept striking me when I read down through these things that I didn't.
So it's 38 of 49, I guess, in the
Parent
full
reporting.
one.
This is-
So there is, if you look at page 3 of the prevention of student bullying, there is parent reporting.
Is it?
Yep, it's letter C.
Okay, that's on our current bullying,
Yeah, but you're right.
but I don't think I saw that in the state model. That would,
Oh.
right, if we toss the other 3 and incorporate this one single, I would want to make sure that is at least an avenue for, because then by definition, if somebody brings it forward, a parent brings it forward, then, how do we respond to that?
And it is also in the procedures of prevention of harassment in the existing policy, but it doesn't say parent specifically, it says other reporting.
That I can
Well,
deal with.
but other reporting is about witnessing, isn't it?
Who's, and a parent
Yes,
not
you're
necessarily
right, it
witness. They're not necessarily here to witness.
Yeah.
So if maybe it's just that one paragraph about parent reporting, maybe, because I think that's a key. I'm not too concerned about a senior in high school that is being thinking that they would bring it forward, but even they may not, right?
Yeah.
But I'm thinking the 3rd and the 4th grader, where it's going to be less likely that they'll come forward with
Yeah.
it.
And also, that was a good point you made, Julian, about witnessing, because that is also what it says in the bullying. Any parent or legal guardian custodian who witnesses conduct that he or she reasonably believes.
Yeah, which is kind of limiting.
Yeah. The reality is what happens,
Mm.
in day to day, is that wherever you get a report from, you investigate it.
Right. Well, and even in the procedures, the parent reporting says witnesses or who reasonably believes his or her child or ward is being bullied. So there's like an out to that witness clause. But right, I'm sure what you said is true. I mean, you get a report, you're going to check it out, right? Probably does make sense to codify it, though. I do like.
But I think the statement that you had in the bullying policy may be enough to the parent reporting, may be enough to incorporate.
Yeah.
I read through it twice and it was.
Good eye, Michael.
That's a good eye.
I don't know, it just kept coming back to me every time I read through one of these sections. It didn't have the ability for a parent.
Yep. Good eye.
All right, anything else? I mean, these are just so inclusive to everything. It really comes down again to I mean, you can define everything you want in a policy. The procedures they have to be followed up.
Right.
So I asked Sean when we started the evening, what kind of, I'm not even sure what it is, but is the staff likely to report something that they witness?
Yeah.
Because that's a big deal if it goes witnessed and not reported. And
Kids will be kids. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and there's certainly a fine line. Well, there's not even a fine line there. So it is sometimes, and you know, the answer is, to the best of the ability that we know, it's being done. I think that was kind of your response, right?
Yeah,
So,
but you also never know.
Right.
I mean, that's part of the reality too. Is you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
you do the best that you can to raise awareness, make people aware of their responsibilities,
Mhm.
and create a climate and a culture where it's limited, but
Yeah.
it happens.
So
Yep. Yep.
to answer your question, it is, if you look in the definitions, I think that takes care of your parent problem.
Of the model policy?
Yes.
what page on the side?
Which one?
33.
Number page 3.
33.
It'd be B, complaint
Complainant.
and
Complainant.
complainant.
Where are you?
Page 3.
I'm not even sure how
Page
to.
3/33.
Page 3 of the model policy.
Oh, okay. Definitions.
Under, you
Gotcha.
said C?
Under definitions.
Yep.
Under C?
Under B and C, I think.
Provided by a student or any
Both.
person.
Provided by
Yeah.
a student or any person.
Mhm.
That opens it up to parents, anybody.
Or any
To
person.
an employee alleging that a student has been subjected. Okay.
Mhm.
And then C, a student has provided oral or written information about conduct that may arise to the level, or a student is the target.
Mhm.
What if the student doesn't provide the oral or written? I guess that's where I kept coming back to.
Well, that's what B is, right?
Does that cover the
I think so.
I think it
complaint
covers,
itself?
yeah.
Okay. All right.
I don't. In fact, if B is there, I don't see why you need C. But
Right.
because B seems to cover everybody. An oral or written report provided by a student or any person.
But these are just definitions, so it might be
Uh-huh.
later on in the
Ah,
thing that
there we
it
go.
The
applies.
language that they use
Right.
in the
I got you.
procedures.
I was going to say, if Nicola's gone, we can blame it on the lawyers, but.
No,
Okay.
I think you're
All
right about
so-
that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I can be had for that.
Well, I don't know, it's just the words.
Employee coordinator. So
I mean, whatever. So long as
Yeah.
it's clear that anybody can bring the complaints.
and we need to be very diligent about pursuing
Yeah. And
the
making-
truth.
Yep.
As
And
best
then-
we can tell it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that it's not subject strictly to witnessing or employees or students.
All right. So when we come back, then we'll have a striking of the individual harassment, the individual hazing, the individual bullying, and agree to incorporate the combined model as is. Because I think
Yep.
it takes care of it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That'll clean us up. Get us through
Sorry, I
the.
didn't mean to lose your train of thought.
No.
No,
Good,
it's
very
good
good.
catch. Yeah.
No, that works.
It's a lot
I
of stuff to read and look at.
was dizzy when I got done with that one, for sure. All right, and did you have your? All right, so we are at this point down to community engagement. Julian, you're probably as uncomfortable with this as I am, but apparently you've received an award recently.
Oh, yes.
You did.
Can you help us?
I did. I got a community building block award
Nice.
from the United Way. Yeah, it was very exciting.
Nice.
I was very pleased and honored.
For the opiate work?
Yeah, right. So Kate Nugent nominated me, and they picked me, and yeah, it was a
Congratulations.
very nice event. Thank you. Yep, got some got to witness a very nice event where it was sort of the kickoff of their annual campaign, right? Their annual drive, and so they told some really great stories about why people give, and they made a nice little video, and we all got up on stage and we were honored. They gave us some real nice theater tickets to the Flynn and chocolate, and it's really great. Yeah, no, it felt really nice to be recognized and be honored. And
You certainly put a lot of work into what's gone in there so far. It's been a lot of work. It's been a good.
yeah,
I've enjoyed
Thank
that
you.
a lot because it opened my eyes to, again, not killing the addict, but taking
Yeah.
care of the problem and
Yeah.
just troubleshooting, basically.
Yeah.
So
right.
certainly appreciated it.
Hopefully we can take it further.
Good. Nice. I had one other item under this discussion point, and I wanted to bring it up as far back as June, and that is, and we've only given one away, and that was the golden apple.
Yeah.
But those were meant to give to individuals who go above and beyond to help. We had they have tutoring sessions down at the community center each, I think it was Thursdays, from 4 to 7 or something. And I was down there for a community dinner one night, and I had someone pass me who I had worked with, still do, coming from Essex to tutor our kids.
Is that right?
And he did it pretty regularly through the year last year.
Wow.
And I just thought that to me is a definition of above and beyond. Because he enjoyed it. He just enjoyed the kids in Winooski, and he enjoyed the time, and he had the free time to do it. So I'm wondering if that would be something that we could do, maybe have him in and
Absolutely.
present him with an apple. Does that fit the definition?
It does for
Work
me.
okay?
I think that's right on.
I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought if we had somebody, we were submitting it to Sean
I don't know how we want to
for
do
the
that.
criteria. I don't either, but I thought, is that what we decided last year?
Yeah, I never got anything from anybody
No.
there was some discussion
Think
at a
we
meeting
just-
in the spring, but
Yeah, I just wanted to keep it on the table because there are a lot of people that do a lot of work that
Yeah,
just.
I absolutely agree. I could name a
Love to.
few right off the top of my head that
Okay.
would be worthy of it
So let's
also. So
take them up for nomination as we move forward, and we've got a few of them left, right?
yeah, and I think if people wanted to send me recommendations, then Mike and I could look at them at agenda planning too. And, eventually we might end up with enough that we want to have some sort of a system
Vetting.
around it,
Vetting process, but
quarterly, monthly, whatever you decide to do. But
okay.
we've got some apples sitting in the
yeah, I think that's a great idea because
cupboard.
that's a volunteer helping students learn. And,
Yeah, that
It's an
is.
amazing amount of time that people can spend
Yeah.
and loving it.
Well, I think that's the stuff we want to promote and get people, get the word out that people are doing.
Yep.
And I think, WWJD, what would Jay do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think he would be into that one.
Yeah. All right. So what I can do then, I think that'll have to go along with it is a short, brief write-up and a description for presentation, and I'll see if I can contact them to get them to come in November.
Great.
All right. Any other recent community activity?
Did you go to that one where he was recognized?
No.
Okay.
Were you there?
Wait a minute.
No, I couldn't do
Fortunately, missed it.
that.
Okay.
And they didn't tell me ahead of time that you were going to be awarded it.
Oh.
And then he told me when he found out. So
Yeah.
apologize.
It's okay.
It wasn't intentional.
No.
Well, I'm sure you all read Mike's piece in the VSBA fall. He was featured as a board member of the month. Basically.
Oh, I missed that.
And it
Yeah,
was
I
in
missed
the
it
agenda.
too.
It was in the agenda packet too, behind the superintendent report, highlighting his leadership and work around policy governance and ends development, and it was great.
Hey, right on.
Having such a good team to work with, it makes it easy. So
That is
it's
great.
good.
I just recycled that too.
Wait, where is that show?
I think it was in section 8. No, 7.
And what's the name of it?
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. All
All
right.
right.
For the minute?
Pardon?
The name of was it a newsletter?
Yeah, it's a
And
VSBA fall
VSBA.
newsletter.
Thanks.
All right.
I'll
So
be
we.
sure to read it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so next agenda, any other items that we should or need to bring forward?
Well, we talked about looking at some discipline data. Last time you were going to get some stuff from the state, and then I think you and Randy were going to try to sort it out because it's
Yep.
complicated.
Mm-hmm.
How's it coming?
We have some.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that it's all that revealing, but we have some.
It's not.
Right.
Yeah, because the numbers are so small.
Yeah, the numbers are small.
Uh-huh.
And I would say just knowing what the data system has looked like here, I wonder about the reliability
Yeah.
a little bit too.
Okay. Well, should we have a brief look at that next time and just see what we got and revisit that policy too on discipline?
This goes back to our discussion about the inequities and
Mhm.
across.
Yeah. Yep. Race, class, and special ed.
Yep.
So let's see, student conduct and discipline must be coming up because it was approved last in August of 12.
Okay.
So,
Because we should be close to it. Well, we're going to clean up from our cycle, but we'll be on a 3-year cycle
Uh-huh.
as we go forward. So
Oh, yeah, what was that?
so I can look up quickly where
annual
it
agenda
is
there,
in
yeah.
the cycle
Mhm.
and see if you want to wait or whether you want to
Yeah.
do it sooner.
You got it right there.
Yeah.
I'm getting a Google Docs lesson. We just started with it at work. And
It's set
So do we.
for first reading in May.
Okay. Let's bump it up.
we
Yeah,
can
can we flip flop?
Yeah.
do whatever order we want.
Mhm.
That's
As
Yeah,
well.
because this
That is
month now
based
we're,
on
we're
order,
off
right?
policies until February
Oh, because
Because of the
budget.
because
Budget.
of budget.
Well, let's do it in February.
So we could, right now in February, we have student educational records, FERPA, and non-English language background.
FERPA.
Those are all good. Yeah, let's push for it though.
Okay.
That would make the most sense too.
Mm-hmm.
Because that one's pretty standard,
I was gonna say that.
pretty set in what you have to do.
Nothing to be
so-
done there.
That's the law.
Yeah. Okay.
Just make sure we're going by the law.
All right, I'm gonna make the
Good.
change right here.
Thank you for keeping that on
Mm-hmm.
task. Anything else from an agenda perspective? All right, upcoming teacher negotiation Thursday. First pass, setting the ground rules, and then the VSBA conference, the VSA conference it is next week, isn't it? Thursday and Friday.
Yeah.
And then our next board meeting on the 11th November. Anything else we missed? Long one tonight, but
Yeah.
good discussion.
Me
All
too.
So I would, at this point, in not hearing anything else, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Any other comments? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Adjourn at 9:25.
All right.
Very good.
Well done, everybody.
Thank you.